Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel that takes you deep inside the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, Jack Hammer. It is Overreaction Monday. That's right, the 49ers opening up their 2023 season yesterday with a blowout 37 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers out in Pittsburgh. So we're going to get right to it. We are going to take a look at my 10 takeaways from yesterday's big win for the San Francisco 49ers. And we're going to start off with number one, Brock Purdy. That's right, the 49ers quarterback. He is the real deal. There's a lot of talk this year in the offseason about Purdy. Kyle Shanahan was questioned about their belief in Purdy at one point, and Shanahan's comment was, we're not worried about Brock. We know who he is. He's the real deal. There's been a lot of talk around that statement this offseason. Well, yesterday, Brock Purdy went out, and he proved that for sure, once again, he is the real deal. 6 career starts in the regular season, 6-0 now. You look at his numbers, Purdy yesterday in his performance, 19 of 29, over 200 yards passing, a couple of touchdowns. You just look at it and the performance that he put up. Really what you look at is there's several things that he's done that were the first time that it's happened in NFL history. Number one, the 2 touchdowns. Brock Purdy became the first quarterback in NFL history to throw multiple touchdowns in their first 6 regular season starts. That's right. If you look at Brock Purdy in all 6 of his regular season starts to this point, he has thrown at least 2 touchdown passes. 2 again yesterday. The other thing that Purdy did yesterday was he had a passer rating of 111.3. That makes him the first quarterback in NFL history to post a passer rating over 95 in their first 6 starts. He's just been dynamite. He was dynamite again yesterday. One area that he's been particularly good in is that intermediate area of the field, 10 to 19 yards past the line of scrimmage. That's when you look at NFL quarterbacks, so that's where they make their money, is on those throws in that 10 to 19 yard range, that intermediate area. Last year, Brock Purdy completed 80.4% of his passes into that area. That is the highest completion percentage in the NFL, according to Pro Football Reference, since they started tracking that data back in 2003. Well, he was 80.4 last year. Yesterday, he was even better. He completed 9 of 10 attempts into that 10 to 19 yard range, including one of his touchdowns. The other one just outside of that was the touchdown to Brandon Aiyuk that went into the end zone. But still, 90% on throws into that area, over 120 yards passing on those throws in which he traveled beyond 10 yards. You look at Purdy's overall numbers yesterday, majority of his passes traveling that distance, at least 10 yards or more. So his average depth of target for the game yesterday, 8.5. And you just look at it, and again, like I said, Brock Purdy's the real deal. If you go through and you look at everything that he's done, it shows. There's been questions about his velocity this year during the offseason coming off that UCL injury. And I'm going to tell you what, that if there's anybody that's questioning that, just go ahead and show them the touchdown pass that he threw to Brandon Aiyuk. That was a dart into the right end zone, right side of the end zone, about 20 yards from the far hash. It wasn't Mahomes-like in terms of the velocity, but it was more than enough velocity to put it right there. And that's a big-time throw, 20-yard, basically a 20-yard out route from the opposite hash, right along the sidelines. Really nice throw, put it right on Brandon Aiyuk. A nice play by the receiver on the other end. Number 2, Christian McCaffrey. And Christian McCaffrey, what is it about him? In particular, his vision. Christian McCaffrey's vision changes the 49ers running game. You look at McCaffrey, his ability to catch the ball often overshadows what he's doing when it comes to his play as a running back. McCaffrey, during his time at Stanford, he always impressed me with his ability to run in between the tackles, even though he wasn't the biggest dude. But the thing is that it all comes from his vision. He can see the hole opening up. He trusts his offensive lineman, and that's exactly what happened yesterday when he busted the 65-yard play on the second snap after halftime, 65 yards. Right up the gut, trusting the blocks, hits it, and he's gone. And that's one of the biggest differences between him and what you see with Elijah Mitchell. It's that vision, that ability to see it, trust it, hit the hole, and get upfield. He just does such a good job of that. He had several runs yesterday over 5 yards. Just a very solid day for Christian McCaffrey. And I just think his vision in particular really helps that offensive line, makes the offensive line better, and in turn makes the 49ers offense as a whole better. Over 150 yards yesterday. The other thing with Christian McCaffrey, he has now scored a touchdown in at least one touchdown in 10 straight games for the San Francisco 49ers. That ties a record. The last time a 49er was able to score touchdowns in 10 straight games was Freddie Solomon. He did that in 1984 from week 9 through the NFC Championship game of that season. So big company right there for Christian McCaffrey. Number 3, Brandon Aiyuk, the 49ers wide receiver. He was perfect yesterday. Perfect in terms of he was targeted 8 times, caught 8 passes, 129 yards were the most that he has had in his career. 129 receiving yards yesterday for Brandon Aiyuk. Caught all 8 targets that came his way, like I mentioned. It also marked the 3rd time in his career that he registered at least 2 touchdowns in a game. So really big performance yesterday from Brandon Aiyuk, and not only in the receiving game, but if you watch some of these runs, his ability to get after it in the run game really helps that out. Rayward McCloud also with a really nice block helping spring Christian McCaffrey at the end of that long 65-yard touchdown run. You know, when you look at the 49ers, and between Aiyuk and McCaffrey and George Kittle and everything that they put out there, it just creates mismatches for the 49ers offense. You know, they are able to stretch defenses vertically, horizontally, makes them cover the entire length of the field and width, and it really helps, and that's why you see the open areas that Brock Purdy is able to manipulate and fit the ball into. All right, let's go over the defensive side. We're going to do a little bit more on the offense in a few minutes, but on the defensive side, Drake Jackson, he cleans up the mess. That's Drake Jackson. And yesterday he recorded 3 sacks against the Steelers. That ties the total from last year, his rookie year. I felt like at one point this offseason, I even wrote an article for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat stating that Drake Jackson was going to be the guy to make the year 2 leap. And the reason I felt was because of what happened yesterday. He's the guy that cleans up the mess. You know, you have Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, and they just create a mess of the pocket. Then you have Kenny Pickett running for his life, and that's where the speed and the ability to chase things down that Drake Jackson possesses really comes into play. He makes a couple of big tackles and 3 sacks yesterday. Number 5, just strong up the middle was that 49ers defense. That's Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead. Those two really did a good job of setting the line of scrimmage, holding tight at the point of attack. Even Javon Kinlaw, you know, there was one big play early in the game, a run by Najee Harris to the left side of the offense, the defense's right side. Fred Warner blew him up in the backfield for a loss. But the guy who made that play was Javon Kinlaw, because Javon Kinlaw ate up 2 blockers that left nobody there to block Fred Warner, who made the run into the alley and just made the tackle. Just a fantastic play. But again, you look at it overall, you know, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave in particular, holding point throughout the game, allowing Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw to run and make the plays. And then it wasn't just that, they also showed their ability to put pressure up the middle. And I'll tell you, there's one thing that quarterbacks hate, is that's pressure in their face up the middle. And the 49ers yesterday with Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead were able to do that repeatedly. And although Armstead finished with only a 1 quarterback hit to his stat sheet yesterday, just watching the game and the performance that he put up, it's clear to see what his impact was on that game. So a big game yesterday in the middle for Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave. Number 6, Fred Warner. Fred Warner was everywhere. Fred Warner was everywhere yesterday. In fact, the entire 49ers defense was everywhere, but Fred Warner in particular, you know, he went out, he had the big hit on Najee Harris that we just mentioned. Also, nearly had an interception after Clown Furl got pressure on Kenny Pickett. Ball hit him right in the hands, should have been a pick 6. Warner, I think, dropped his eyes. I don't know for sure, but that should have been an interception. He didn't hold on. He came back a few plays later, though, a throw down the middle, and got his hands on it, even though he didn't get the pick. That deflection was intercepted by Talanoa Hufanga. So, you know, you got to talk Fred Warner. There's a reason why he's called All-Pro Fred. He played up to that nickname yesterday. Very solid performance there. Number 7, Talanoa Hufanga and Charvarius Ward for their interceptions. You know, the Charvarius Ward interception, that was really nice. He's got tight coverage on Deontay Johnson. There's no reason that ball should have even been thrown by Pickett. Johnson falls, and he's right there. It's an easy pick once Johnson slips, and Ward with the pick gives the offense good field position that they turned into points. And then Talanoa Hufanga, you know, Talanoa Hufanga and Tayshaun Gibson really turned around the 49ers secondary when they became the safeties. You know, you looked at Jaquiski Tartt and Jimmy Ward. They were good safeties, but they weren't playmakers. They didn't make plays. They didn't make plays on the ball. They made plays in terms of tackles, but they weren't playmakers on the ball. They weren't ball hawks in that way. And right now, Talanoa Hufanga, he already has 5 interceptions in his career. This is just his 2nd season as a full-time starter. Yesterday was the beginning of that second season, and he already has more interceptions than Jaquiski Tartt did in his entire career with the San Francisco 49ers. The guy's just a playmaker, he's a ball hawk, and between those two, they have a really good help on that back end. Those takeaways huge for the San Francisco 49ers over these last couple of years. One last positive I want to point out really quick, number 8, is Jake Moody. Jake Moody, like Brandon Aiyuk, perfect on the day. Moody got a lot of people lit up when the 49ers took him in the 3rd round. Didn't like it, but you know what? You look at what he did yesterday. He struggled during the preseason, struggled during the game against the Raiders and the home game against the Broncos with missed field goals and PATs. But the one thing about him was that he'd always been solid during training camp in Santa Clara. He was very good. They're only missed like one or two times. He was extremely solid, and finally the fans yesterday got to see what we've been seeing in Santa Clara at practices. 6 kicks, all through the uprights. 3 of them were PATs. 3 regular field goals, one from 42, one from 40, and another one from 32 yards. So 41, 40, and 32 yards on the field goals. And then also on one of his PATs, there was a penalty that drove him back. So it was actually a 42-yard point after try there. So really good day out of Jake Moody. Really showed, I think, why the 49ers wanted to add him to the roster. Showed that he could hold up in those tough situations. Now, a couple of things in terms of takeaways that aren't necessarily on the positive side, but takeaways nonetheless from that game yesterday. Number 9, just too many penalties for the San Francisco 49ers. They committed 11 penalties yesterday. Those total 85 yards. And when you look at it, that's the 2nd most penalties in the NFL in week 1, coming from the San Francisco 49ers. And on the offensive side, there were a couple of drives that got stalled because of penalties. One, there was a holding call on Spencer Burford. Another was a false start. Both times, the holding call backed them up, and they eventually had to settle for a field goal. The offsides pushed them back, and they ended up having to punt for the first time in the game. And then you look at the defensive side when it comes to the penalties, and the 1 touchdown that the 49ers scored, they got 20 free yards, 15 on a personal foul on Diamondre Lenoir, and then Lenoir later getting a holding that helped to extend that drive. So, the 49ers played an exceptional game yesterday, but they could have even been better if they were just clean in terms of the penalties. So that's something that they need to be better on moving forward. And last but not least, number 10, Colton McKivitz. Colton McKivitz was up and down. It was a mixed bag for him, like I said. Making his first career start at right tackle, McKivitz gave up 3 sacks. He also allowed a quarterback hit, and he also allowed 1 pressure. So it was a rough day, to say the least, for Colton McKivitz against TJ Watt. That's the downside. Now, the upside for McKivitz and the 49ers was that the 49ers had a 20-point lead before McKivitz gave up his first sack of the day. 20 points. They were up 20-0 before TJ Watt made his presence felt. And, you look at it, McKivitz, he's not going to be facing guys like TJ Watt on a week-in, week-out basis. So that's a positive. But on the other side, you got to realize that if the 49ers are going to go to the Super Bowl, they're probably going to have to go through the Dallas Cowboys, who have Micah Parsons, who is every bit as fierce as a pass rusher as TJ Watt. They're going to have to go through the Philadelphia Eagles, who have Hassan Reddick, who we know what he did last year in that NFC Championship game. So McKivitz is going to have to be better if this team's going to win a Super Bowl. They've shown the ability to work around that kind of stuff in the past. They did it yesterday in the beginning of the game. So I don't think it's a thing that is necessarily a deal breaker, but if this team's going to get to the Super Bowl, I think their odds are obviously enhanced if Colton McKivitz plays at a higher level than he did yesterday. The good thing is they have a couple of weeks to work that out before they see Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys at Levi Stadium, and they have all the way until December before they're going to have to worry about Reddick and the Eagles. So he's got to get better. It wasn't bad, though. I think he wasn't bad. It wasn't good. He was right in the middle. He gets a C or a C- if we're grading him today. So there you have it. Those are my 10 takeaways from the 49ers win against the Pittsburgh Steelers on opening weekend out in Pittsburgh. Do me a favor, if you could, take it for what it's worth. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. We're almost at 10,000. Help us get there. And then last but not least, also make sure you turn on your notifications, because I promise you're not going to want to miss any of the updates right here on Inside the Farms with Jack Hammer. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your day.